Hey everybody, it's Liz from West Star Tarot. And today I thought I would spend just a few minutes to kind of process and share with you the experience that I've had over the past 2 weeks as my husband Bob and I have vacationed here in Barbados. I did mention in my previous video about the fact that I had the good fortune to marry someone whose family is from Barbados and in fact still has many relatives here on the island, cousins, aunts, uncles, and a brother. And in fact, we are staying with my brother-in-law and sister-in-law at their house. And so it's been different than any of the other trips I've ever had to Barbados. And although I spend time with folks who live here and spend time having dinner in the homes of folks who live here and eat, real, authentic Bajan food. This has been different because I've been not staying in a tourist neighborhood, but staying in fact, a local residential neighborhood here in Bridgetown. And it's been really an experience, an interesting and enlightening experience. I've learned a lot. So this house that we're staying in is my brother-in-law's second house. He actually, he doesn't really live here that much. He just visits up here once in a while, but he actually lives maybe a half a mile down the street. That's the ocean down that way. He lives in my husband's and his grandfather's house. So this has been a house that's been in the family for many years, and it's a small little wooden house that is very typical of many local houses found here in Barbados, all over the island, and in fact all over the Caribbean. So that's primarily where my brother-in-law Harold lives. He also runs his business out of the house. And originally when I first met him, he was a fisherman, and he, that's a hard way to earn a living, but he made a good living doing that. And then he decided that he was getting a little too old for that, so he became a fish broker. And he still does a little bit of that. But in the past, I would say 10 to 15 years, he started a business where he goes down to the beach every Friday and Saturday night, and they cook up steak fish, fries or chips, and salad. And Harold makes the seasoning. They start seasoning the fish Wednesday and Thursday so that it has plenty of time to really, soak up all that seasoning. I don't know exactly what's in the seasoning, but I know I can taste clove. So I think it's got thyme, clove, scallion, garlic, a little bit of Scotch bonnet, so it's got a little bit of a kick to it. And man, it is delicious. So they pan fry the fish, and they deep fry the chips and salad. And Harold also makes the salad dressing from scratch, a secret recipe of his. Anyway, the whole thing's delicious, and it's just so great. You're sitting down on the beach, you're having this great meal with the Banks beer, which is the local Barbados beer, and it's just fabulous. The business has really taken off, and I mean, sometimes people wait in line for an hour or more to get to the front of the line and put their orders in. So we did have that meal several times while we were down here, and it's been fantastic. Another thing that they have in Barbados are what they call cutters. And basically they're sandwiches, but they're with these little round breads called salt bread, and they're rolls, maybe a little bit like a Kaiser roll or something, a little bit heavier than that, but they're great. So they are called cutters because they just cut into the bread, and you can get a fish cutter, a cheese cutter, a ham cutter, whatever. And they are delicious. I've been making cheese cutters, and we've been bringing those to the beach every day with local tomatoes. We've also had some great watermelon. And we were lucky enough over the past couple days to come across some coconut water and some great coconut, they call it jelly. So the coconut, as it ripens before it gets to that hard coconut that we know, it's softer, and they call it jelly. And that's my favorite. I love the coconut jelly. So anyway, yesterday we spent the day on the beach. It was a gorgeous sunny day. Unfortunately, today not so much. But I had my favorite Bajan fish cakes. There was a lady there making fish cakes and other Bajan food. So we had fish cakes on the beach with some great Banks beers. And also there was a guy there selling coconut bread, which is like a sweet bread that has coconut in it. Oh, delicious. And it was a pretty banner day. So one of the things I wanted to talk about Barbados was the fact that when you go to the beach in Barbados, at least on the weekends, and after certain times of the day, you'll notice that there are tons and tons of Bajans on the beach. And it's actually a law in Barbados that no beach can be private, even if the beach is in front of a fancy condo residence or hotel or whatever. Whoever owns that property cannot say that they can't block anyone from accessing the beach. So every beach that you go to in Barbados, of course, not that I've been to every beach in Barbados, but all the ones I've been to, you always see local folks. And I think that's really fantastic. I think that's how it should be. I'm really glad. I mean, imagine if you lived on this island. Oh, but sorry, you can't go to the beach. And it actually reminds me a little bit about a problem that we're having back home on the Cape. Not as bad on the Cape, but on Martha's Vineyard. So on Martha's Vineyard, which is, when I go to the beach, I look across the bay or Vineyard Sound and I see Martha's Vineyard. It's like 6 miles away by boat. But on the vineyard, there's a problem with local folks being able to access the beach. So a lot of wealthy folks have bought up land on the vineyard and built mega mansions. And what happens is they can't own the whole beach, but they own the access to the beach. So folks who have been going to those beaches, not to sunbathe and swim, but to surf cast and fish and clam and oyster and, get all kinds of the seafood to feed their families and make their livelihood, no longer have access. It's been cut off. And I have a real problem with that. Folks whose families have lived in an area for generations can no longer access those beaches and make the living that they once made. The good news is that the local tribe, the Aquinnah Wampanoag, have a section up island that is their deeded land, and so they do still have access to the tribal lands, and they can still fish and do whatever they want on those lands. So anyway, I really digress. How I got from Barbados to Martha's Vineyard, I'm not sure, but anyway. So that's a really great thing about Barbados. The other thing is, it's just so much more relaxed around here. Like yesterday when we were on the beach, there were a couple fellas walking up and down the beach with bags of coconut, and they were selling coconut. So they would hack off the top of the coconut with a knife and, put a straw in the, punch through the eye of the coconut and put in a straw And one of the guys had a big old bottle of Cockspur, which is one of the local Barbados rums, in his back pocket. And you could either have plain coconut water, or you could have rum and coconut water. So he would pour some of the rum right in, and after you drank it, then he'd come back and cut the coconut in half, and you could scoop out the coconut jelly and eat that. So that's a pretty fantastic treat. But I guess my point is, at least where we live, some guy can't be walking along the beach with a quart of rum in his back pocket selling drinks. It's just not, it's illegal. You never see it. And why not? Who cares? But, you know, where we are, there's just so many more rules and regulations and licensure and insurance and all of that stuff. And here, it's not. It's just so much more relaxed. And I have to say that I really enjoy that. That's something about the Caribbean that I love and that fills my heart and soul when I come here. Anyway, I was originally planning on doing a video of our drive around the island, but somehow we never did that this time. I don't know why. So I just thought I'd talk a little bit about Barbados instead, and just share with you my feelings about the lovely culture here and the island itself. I've noticed our cousins' kids, we've been talking to them about the pandemic and the effect that distance learning has had on the children. Most of the kids are behind in their studies now, and it's the same up by us in Massachusetts, and I think all over the state. So, you know, that's something that we share in common. Barbados is one of the most highly educated islands in the Caribbean, the most highly, I think. Highest level of education, literacy, and all that. And I think they're pretty proud of that, and they should be. That's kind of a great claim to fame. There is a British sort of colonial educational system here. So they have, I noticed, I have friends in England, and I noticed they have the same structure in their educational their schools, and they call, they call what we call in the state private schools, they call public schools. And what we call in the States private schools, am I saying this right? Public schools are private schools, and private schools are public schools. Anyway, we use different terminology in the States than here, and it's kind of confusing. Because I'm thinking, well, we call it public because it's publicly funded, and private because it's privately funded. But I'm not sure why it's the reverse here or in the rest of the Caribbean. I'm not sure about that. Something I'll have to look into. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in my previous video, but in Barbados, they have, their governmental structure is a prime minister and a president. They used to, up until November of this past year, they had the Queen of England as their head of state, and the prime minister was the head of government. But now they have become a republic. They no longer have the Queen as the head of state. They have a president as the head of state, and they have a prime minister as the head of government. And they are both actually women, which is pretty exciting. So the last thing I kind of wanted to talk about was masks. So any of you watching who are Americans or from the States, you'll know how politicized mask wearing has become in the States. And it's so annoying. I mean, it's beyond annoying. It's life-threatening to people. And, you know, we have these folks who seem to care more about themselves and their freedom than they do about stopping a pandemic. Of course, many of them don't believe there's a pandemic, so there is that. But anyway, here in Barbados, that's not an issue. People wear the masks. Everywhere you go, people are wearing their masks. Everyone sanitizes, every shop, at the post office, the grocery store, every restaurant, every place you go, places where we went and got COVID tests, everywhere you go, there's sanitizer and people wear masks. I haven't heard one person, and I've spent a lot of time with local folks here. I haven't heard one person complain about wearing a mask. Going in and out of shops and restaurants and bars, I haven't seen one person say, I don't want to wear a mask, my feet up. I haven't heard tourists say that. I haven't heard Americans say that. And you know why? Because the tone has been set here. And the tone that's been set is we wear masks. That's what we do. So I've found that quite enlightening and quite interesting as well. How I've seen folks being so compliant with mask wearing, and no one complains about it. It's just something that you do here. In fact, I just heard recently that even walking down the street, you're supposed to be wearing a mask. So, yeah. Anyway, we're going home tomorrow. The good news is it's almost May. So, within the next few weeks, I'll be going to my own beach at home. Hopefully it'll be warm enough in next month where I'll be going to my own beach and outdoors and starting my garden and so forth. So, it's not so bad leaving Barbados the end of April to go back to the States or back to New England as it is when you come down here earlier. And it's one of the reasons why I really do like to come down here the end of March to the end of April. It just sort of lengthens the spring and summer season somehow. And, that is my favorite time of year. So anyway, I'm signing off from the beautiful island of Barbados, gem of the Caribbean. And when I get home, I have a number of videos I want to make. There are a bunch of VRs I want to do, and I have a whole list of videos I'm planning to do when I get home. So thank you for joining me. And if you've traveled places and stayed with locals, either because you have family from, from somewhere where you're not from, or, you've made friends in other countries, I'd love to hear your comments below on what those experiences were like for you and what you've learned and how you were enlightened by staying with local areas. So, cheers.